Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the CultureVerse podcast. This is not just another episode. This is not just a review. This is not just another game. We recently reviewed a film titled Broke from 2025. Caleb and I went on and on and on about how much we liked it. We made an episode about it. Just the two of us, we loved it by just the absolute privilege and grace,
Yeah.
we had gotten reached out by the director's wife saying that he would love to speak with us. So today we have Carlyle Eubank, the director of Broke, somehow on our podcast show. So, Carlyle, please go ahead, introduce yourself. Let us know a bit about yourself and your love for film, man.
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. Yeah, my wife, I don't know how she ended up getting the podcast, but someone sent it to her. I don't know if they'd seen it on one of the review sites like Letterboxd or something like that, but it just sort of got to her and she showed it to me and I listened and I really appreciated like the whole facet or gamut of what you guys talked about, like the goods, the things you guys didn't like. Like I like hearing that stuff
Mhm.
because it feels like people are really engaging with the movie and having opinions, and I think that's what movies are all about. Um, I have always kind of been engaged with filmmaking. My brother is also a director.
Mhm.
He directs bigger movies than I do. He did like a movie called Land of Bad, which is Russell Crowe and Liam Hemsworth. And we made a movie a long time ago called The Signal,
Mhm.
with Lawrence Fishburne, which is like a sci-fi type thing. So, he's been doing film for a long time. I went to college and studied English, and then when I came home, he was working as like a director of photography. He worked at Panavision as like a loader,
Mhm.
and then for like worked his way up the ladder, became like a first AC, and then eventually became a DP and was directing stuff on his own on the side. When I finished college, I had some ability to write, and he doesn't like love the writing side quite as much.
Mhm. Yeah.
So he asked me to help him write this script, and it became The Signal. I went to Sundance. I thought, oh my gosh, this is so easy. And then I was quickly humbled by life because that was like 15 years ago. And it's taken that long to kind of, I've written some other stuff in the interim, so smaller kind of like, you might even call them like B movies, just like action genre type movies, like programmers. Just keeping my foot in the door. I've written a lot of things that are not made. I've sold stuff to studios and stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of them haven't seen the light of day. But yeah, this movie broke. I wrote probably 11 years ago.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And it's just taken a long time to get the right people involved who were going to make the movie in the way that, you know, I
Mhm.
wanted to make it. Because if you're going to write and direct something, you might as well do it basically the way you want to do it. The only time you deviate from like what you want is if somebody has a better idea.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's taken a long time. Even once I had funding, and we went and started shooting, that was a long time ago. That was like 4 years ago. So
Wow.
it's been like a long haul. Uh,
Mhm.
some of the obstacles to like getting it to come out, are things that I'm aware of, and then I just feel like there were other forces behind the scenes that nobody ever told me about. I think there's like sausage making behind the sausage factory too. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. There's stuff that I feel like in 5 years, someone's going to be like, hey, so like what happened was, um, so yeah, it's just been a long journey. There's probably a lot of that kind of like pain and struggle that like went into this movie,
Hmm.
because the movie is kind of like a metaphor for that kind of stuff, which we can get obviously
Oh, yeah.
deeper into. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my journey with film. I also, I live in rural California,
Hmm.
and I do run cows, and my folks have a bunch of horses, so I kind of run their horse program, I guess you'd call it. So like they breed, and I start the colts, and sometimes we sell them. Sometimes, a lot of them we just keep for ranching and stuff like that. So it's stuff that I do for real.
Hmm.
I was never a professional bronc rider or anything like that, but I do ride young horses that try to buck me off all the time. Um, and yeah, so it's definitely the world I know, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
we can both say that we are very grateful that that long journey turned into this film for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
it was a spur of the
Thank
moment, like Friday night. I know we mentioned in the episode, Gabe and I had just finished reviewing Fight or Flight, just came out, and we were just like, we're both kind of bored. Like, what can we do? And we were
hmm
scrolling through. I'm going to plug the spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet with a
Yeah.
bunch of movies that have coming out in 2025 just to keep progress of where we're at.
Mhm.
And I was
hmm
like, well, this movie came out recently that we could probably have review. It's kind of underground. Like we were like, yeah, sure, let's throw a dart at it. And we also mentioned Western is not really Gabe's genre, so it was
No,
kind of
hmm
yeah, I've never been much into Western, and I don't know if that's just like a preference thing or not. Like, there's a few
Yeah.
I like, but Caleb mentioned that one, and I don't know why. I don't know what came over me, but I was like,
hmm
let's watch it. Like, I read the synopsis,
Yeah.
and I was like, hey,
Yeah.
Wyatt Russell, Dennis Quaid, like, those are two great actors. Like, the story
hmm
sounds good. Let's do it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Caleb just
Cool.
pulled it out of nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, that's like, how did you guys hear about it? If you don't mind my asking, I just it's good to know like how people are finding it.
So what I did at the beginning of the year, and every 2 weeks I update our spreadsheet. I'll probably again.
hmm
I go to Wikipedia. I literally just look up 2025 movies coming out.
Oh, cool.
So
Oh,
it's like
interesting.
by month. It sorts it. Movies come
Yeah.
out. I put everything
Yeah.
that has like at least interest to me and what I think maybe would interest to Gabe and the other guys on the show that
hmm
aren't here.
Yeah.
So I mean, for May we have like 30 movies that are both like streaming movies, like
That's
theatrically
awesome.
released. So we have a ton of stuff that's
That's
for
cool.
reference. And so I guess you can thank Wikipedia, right? I can thank it
Yeah,
for
for sure. Yeah, I was about to.
Yeah, it was just crazy. It was like Caleb said, it was such a spur of the moment. Like
Yeah.
I promise you, 10 minutes after he said it, we were splitting the cost to rent it on Apple TV. Like we were like, let's do
Yeah.
it. Like it
Yeah,
was just
true to
crazy.
the movie's name,
Well,
you know, it's
yeah.
like
Exactly. Before we get into questions, Caleb, you wanted to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have a very hard cutting question here. So we
Yeah.
ran cross country in high school. I
Oh
have a
yeah.
bunch of cross country family
Yeah.
runners.
Oh
What
yeah.
what was your PR in a 5K?
For a cross country 5K?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. I think I was 15:42 maybe.
Oh, that
Yeah,
blows
that blows
ours
me
out of the
out.
water.
Yeah. Well, look, in California, it's like different. We don't run a lot of 5Ks, like actual 5Ks.
Hmm.
We run the 5K, like most of it is 3 mile, like
Yeah.
or like plus or minus. They
Mhm.
don't do a lot of the standardized stuff. I don't know why. Like our biggest meet, and I actually haven't kept up with any of it, but it used to be called Mount Sac, was the biggest cross country meet of the year.
Right.
And that one's like super weird. It's like 2.7, like people are like breaking
Whoa.
14, you
Yeah.
know? But it's so hilly that like there's
Oh,
like three monster hills in it. And our state isn't there, but our sectional finals were always there. The CIF Southern section always ran our finals at Mount Sac. But yeah, so I actually, I grew up doing horses and stuff like that, and I got really into running, and then for years, like I didn't, I got sick of the horse stuff because it was just like kind of what I grew up around, and so yeah, in high school, I got really serious into cross country and track. Like I think I ended up for my division, I got fourth in state in cross country, which in
wow.
California
Not
is like
bad.
not bad.
Yeah.
And
No,
then
not too bad.
I won my divisional finals for the mile my senior year and got second my junior year in the mile and 2 mile. So I was pretty competitive, and that's how I got into a good college. Like I I was always like a decent student, but I just, like didn't really like running was my edge. That's how I got into college. And I went to a really good college on the East Coast. They slotted me because I would never have been able to get in on my own. I guess I was smart enough to know how to play the game.
Right, there you go.
But
That's all it
but
takes.
but I was terrible at SATs. I was terrible at ACTs, like just stunk at that stuff. So I just thought maybe if I run really fast,
Hey, whatever
some
works.
coach somewhere.
Yeah,
Anyways, that's the cross
yeah.
country
I
thing.
I was
I
just
that was like 75 pounds ago. I'm now full dad bod engaged. Like not I don't run anymore at all. I screwed my back up. So
I get that.
anyways, but
That's
That's so
awesome.
cool. You guys ran cross country.
You know,
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
I was just like, I researched you a little bit and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
cross country. I was like, we all did
Yeah.
that. Like my dad
Yep.
ran cross country, my aunts
Heck
ran
yeah,
cross
man.
country. So
There's
it's
Yeah.
like,
nothing as cool. They're so cool. And I always have respect for like the Midwest and the East Coast. Like cross country is so pure out there, like you guys run in actual spikes and you run through like soggy grass and
So
golf
definitely
courses. I mean, it's
soggy.
like true cross country. And in
Hmm.
California, it's a lot of asphalt and dirt and we
It's
only run
crazy.
like a true cross country race at state. They put
Mhm.
us like in a big park and you like wear spikes for the first time all season.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyways,
Yeah.
for
Sorry,
sure.
side tangent, but I wanted to bring it up. It's kind of
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, I'm
So,
no,
glad you did. Dude, honestly, I could talk about cross country all day.
yeah,
I
no,
loved distance running. And dude, watching the Olympics this past year was so great.
mm,
Like
mhm.
watching oh gosh, what was his name? He won the mile. It was so great.
no, oh, no, no,
1500.
no. Oh, yeah, yeah. We had the crazy comeback.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
think
I
Yeah,
of
can't
it
think of
like
it.
in
Yeah.
yep,
5 seconds here, but it was so great. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
I was so excited.
yep. It,
Hawker. Cole, is it something Hawker?
I think
Anyways,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about though.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's I had played soccer all high school and senior year, Caleb.
Mm.
He'd always been trying to get me to do cross country, and I never done it. And senior year, I was like, all
Well, in
right,
other sports, running's the
yeah,
punishment.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was like, whatever, I'll do it. And that senior year, I was like, this is the best team I've ever been on. This is a family. Like this
Yeah.
is so much better than
Heck
everything
yeah.
I've done.
Yeah,
So
love it. Love it.
it's
That's
awesome.
great.
Okay, well, let's kind of open up some questions here. And again, we want this to
Sure.
feel more like a conversation than
Yeah.
us just hitting you with a bunch of stuff.
Panel.
So
Yeah.
for sure. Caleb, if you're good, I'll go ahead and start with one here. So you had kind of mentioned earlier that that concept of like struggling and whatnot was something you wanted to come from the movie. So I just want to know like what was the biggest takeaway that you wanted people to bring out of Broke? Because I know we kind of discussed like what the themes
Hmm.
could have been, what the real
Hmm.
takeaway is. I thought it was more
Hmm.
of like a putting some light on the concept of CTE and how like that can
Hmm.
mental health can affect all that. But we just want to
Hmm.
hear directly from you. Like what was your takeaway?
Yeah, I think if I think rodeo was sort of like the top line vehicle to explore um the bigger question that I think at the time of writing it, and even to this day, I still have it, is just like, what in the world am I doing? And did I make the right choices?
Hmm.
Am I going down the right road? Am I pursuing my actual passion? It's like, I just think like, and I think, I don't know if this is other people's experience, but like, I definitely some nights will just like wake up and just be like panicked, like what, you know, am I like going down the right road? Um, and so like that was kind of the big the big idea. And then, when I started to construct the story, it was just sort of populated with um people and stories from my life. And then rodeo I think is just like a good metaphor, a good visual metaphor. It's cinematic, but it's about, like hanging on to something that doesn't want you on its back, you know? And and then, the CTE and the head trauma is definitely something that like people don't talk about in rodeo. Um, I think it's probably good people know about it. It wasn't really my intention to sort of like expose it per se.
Hmm.
If that like happens as a byproduct, like great. People should take care of themselves and not like, you know, put themselves into car wreck after car wreck,
Yeah.
so to
Right.
speak. If they're super damaged and hurt, they should try to get the help. But at the same time, look, part of what's romantic, capital R, about rodeo is the guys that do it are like gluttons for punishment. They
Mhm.
don't want to quit. They don't want to stop. And I think that's part of what's compelling about it is, when you make a movie, you're always like, why doesn't he just stop? Or no one's forcing him to do it.
Mm.
And so you try to find the thing that feels organic and not forced. And I just know I grew up with a lot of guys. A lot of my friends did rodeo professionally, um, and never made what they call the yellow shoots, which are it's like the NFR. That's the big game.
Mhm.
So they just struggled in anonymity and went probably longer than they should have, and hurt their bodies pretty bad. But they never felt sorry for themselves. They just, and I think there's something like something cool about that. There's something respectable about that. It's just their passion and they love it.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's like, I think the takeaway is about, you know, hoping that like people watching it like connect with that big question, because I think a lot of people in like our general generation, maybe you guys are a little younger than me. You're definitely younger than me, but still, I think like my generation and your generation have a lot of those big questions about what in the world's going on, and
Hmm.
what like what are we doing with our lives, and like how do we find our right path? So
Yeah.
and hopefully some hope, like that
Mhm.
other people are having the same big questions, even if they do something completely different than you or come from somewhere completely different.
Hmm.
Everybody has these big questions, and you gotta like hang in there.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
that kind of reminds me of where you said that you've been working on this for some time. It kind of reminded me of when we talked about the episode, Gabe, like all the pressures that our age group feels like. You that time ago was
Yeah.
the exact same age we were right now.
Hmm.
And so I think that is so
100%.
true,
Yep.
that I think it's so genius the fact that you have so many different components in Drew's
Hmm.
life that are weighing him
Hmm.
down, whether it's his career, whether it's his love life, whether
Hmm.
it's his family. I think that's just
Yeah.
so great. And
Yeah.
that's the part that I was so connected with, and what I resonated with the
Yeah.
story was how there's so many things in his life that are pressuring him, and it's like
Yeah.
where is he at in the story? I think it's that was just something, that connection I made. I thought was really great.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It's probably one of the reasons why I ended up liking it more as well with
Mhm.
not loving West films, because it there's a category, there's a kind of like a, I don't want to say trauma, but an issue for everybody. There's
Yeah.
the romantic side of feeling that pressure,
Yep.
of, like not being able to find a partner, or especially with Dennis Quaid as his father and constantly
Yeah.
asking him, "What are you doing? What's the plan?" And that really,
Yeah.
like, that's
Yeah.
such a common thing, is especially at our age, is all these adults, professors, people telling you,
Yeah.
"What are you doing? What's your plan?" And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, don't stop
Yeah.
asking me that. And it was portrayed so
Totally.
powerfully.
Yeah. I think also like, this isn't like the one portrait you could do a rodeo. There's like different ways you could skin it. I chose like an archetype within that sport of like the lone wolf, because
Hmm.
I also think like a lot of people today feel very lonely and disconnected. And I didn't like want to show that like he's on his phone all the time or whatever, which I think would be like today's version of that. But I still wanted to like feel that isolation and like disconnection. Um, because that's like another thing. I think that's like an underlying issue. And again, I didn't like set out to like do these themes. I think I was just like writing a story, and then you kind of watch your movie a bunch of times, and then you realize like what the themes were. And I think those were just things like I was worried about or feeling at the time, and some of them I still feel to this day. But some of those threads kind of go away, and then you pick up other concerns and other, like, anyways, yeah, I'm not exactly the same person today that I was when I wrote it, but those were like, I think the big issues that were probably in my subconscious or something when I was writing it.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that kind of guides me to one of my first questions I wrote down is, I know that you had mentioned too that you were a screenwriter more.
Mhm.
How did that kind of impact how you went about your directing choice? Like, how did that kind of
Yeah.
guide your decision making with the actual
Yeah.
camera maybe in hand?
Well, that's a good question. I like, well, as first time director, I had like no frame of reference. I obviously had my brother,
Hmm.
um, as like a general like role model. He'd been directing movies for a while, so I'd been around it enough to have a little bit of an understanding about how a set works and the process, but still, like my understanding was pretty shallow. I honestly, I don't think like I had like a concrete plan when I directed it. I think I approached very like actor friendly. Like I knew if I just like picked the right actors, um, and not over direct them, like I thought it'll turn out okay. Like I'll be okay.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think I'm like a very controlling person or director. So I think to me, like I just wanted to control the big decisions and
Hmm.
then let the actors kind of do what they do. It doesn't mean it was like chaos and like do whatever you want, it like ad lib and all that. Like there was some of that, but I think it was just like trying to pick good people. Making a movie is like collecting like really talented people and putting them around you to sort of focus on what they do best. So and then you kind of observe everything and you call BS where it needs to be called, or you make your preferences known where they need to be known. But like, as far as acting, Wyatt is really good and very strong, very natural, and Dennis is very good and strong and natural. So yeah, I don't know. I think I just tried to make good choices and then roll with it as best I could. I mean, like it was a hard movie. Like we
Yeah.
had very little money. Like we made it for like 2 million bucks. And we shot in two different times. So we shot in February in Montana during a snowstorm, and then we took a 3 month break, and then we came back and shot all the rodeo stuff. So
Wow.
like doing that on like a very small budget, like 2 million, which is a lot of money, but it's also not a lot of money that
Right.
Yes.
um, it it's you're very exposed when you like break camp after shooting for 2 weeks in the winter and hoping everyone comes back in July.
Yeah, for sure. That
So
makes sense. I'm sure this is a pretty commonly brought up question for people that you've met with, but I want to put a little bit of a twist to it. So you kind of explained there how it was working with Wyatt Russell, and I
yeah.
definitely would like to know more about that, but I'd like to know specifically how is it working with Wyatt after previously having worked with his father, Kurt, on crypto? I
Oh
saw that you've
yeah.
done some writing, and I want to know, did
Yeah.
that cross your mind?
I mean, yeah, I actually met Kurt before I met Wyatt.
Hmm.
I was just a writer on that project, so I wasn't like super involved in the like production of it. I just wrote the script and Kurt liked it and came aboard it. I got to meet him and he is like a ton of energy. He's
Yeah.
super enthusiastic. He's a super cool guy. And
Hmm.
I grew up on movies like Tombstone. So it was cool. It was cool to meet like or any John Carpenter movie,
Yeah.
like Escape from LA or The Thing or whatever. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, Kurt's like an icon. Um, and I didn't at the time didn't know as much about Wyatt.
Hmm.
I'm not even sure. I still need to figure out like how Wyatt ended up getting the script. But he got the script and he texted me. It must have been through a mutual friend or something, and
Hmm.
he was so passionate. And at that time, this was a long time ago. I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I, went and watched a bunch of stuff he was in. I was like, man, he's great. Lodge 49 is a great show, and Overlord's a great movie. And the episode, I think the thing that like really caught my eye was he was in an episode of Black Mirror called
Hmm.
Playtest, which is like super strong. Like, and it's very short. It's like all those episodes are very short, and he just made such a meal out of such a short episode. I was like, dude, this guy is really good.
Hmm.
So I knew he was the real thing, he's the
Hmm.
real deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. We talked about how, now he's getting all these big roles. He was in the new Marvel
Yeah.
film with
Oh my
Thunderbolts, and
gosh.
he'd been
Yeah.
in the TV show before that, but we both sat down, I mean, in our review, and we were like, this is the best he's ever been. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
him as True
Yeah.
Brandywine is the best acting performance we've seen,
Mm,
but I think we also really kind of like tipped our hat to the writing. And I mean, the
mm.
writing of the character was so good, but he lived the character. Like he
Yeah.
felt like the most believable
Yeah.
we'd seen from him. Like it was incredible.
He so before he was an actor, he was a hockey player.
Hmm.
He played like professional hockey on some level in Canada and elsewhere.
Hmm.
So I think part of the realism he brought to it was just like he comes from like an athlete's kind of perspective. I think that was his. I think if he had his way, he would probably be a famous professional hockey player right now and not an actor.
Hmm.
Um, I feel comfortable like claiming that for him. He can correct me if I'm wrong. But he got a bunch of concussions and he got hurt, so he couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And he went into the family business, which I think was a smart move. He's good at it. Both of his parents are great. His
Hmm.
sister-in-law, his brother, everybody around him is like a consummate professional.
Yeah.
So it makes sense he went into the family business. But yeah, yeah, he approached it, I think, from that athlete's mentality, and I think that's why it feels kind of like real and authentic.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I heard on a sorry, I can't remember the specific interview you had done with, but you
Mhm.
had said something about trying to separate characters from being a one. I don't want to say one trick pony, but where it's like a one role thing and they're only seen as that. And I thought that was very interesting because it's like I remember when I was watching this movie, and of course you had shot this, I believe, before he really got onto the scene that large, but it was
Oh
hard for
yeah,
me personally to see him otherwise as John Walker, like in Thunderbolts. And I think very
right,
quickly after um
right.
like halfway through the movie, I was like, man, he is really going off. So I thought it was really great how he was able
Hmm.
to portray a character that's so different than what he had been seen as so
Totally.
prominently in Thunderbolts. So I think that I thought it was a really great performance. Like really, I could just attest to how great
Cool.
that was really
Yeah, I
was.
mean, he was the right man for the job for sure. I think he just really brought it, you know. You're just watching the monitor when you're making the movie and you're just going like, I believe it. I mean, that's all like that was my metric for everything was like, do I believe it or do I not believe it, you know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
and I always believed whatever he was saying. Like I was like, yep, that's the guy. That's the
Yeah,
guy I wrote. So that's
For
good.
sure. For
yeah.
sure. Caleb, you want to ask?
Sure. Yeah, I one of the things that was so interesting to me about this movie was how it was kind of non-linear and it was also just like the juxtaposition
Hmm.
of all of it.
Yeah.
Tell me about what your decision was to like go that way instead of having it just start with him as a rodeo going towards the
Yeah.
survival story.
Yeah. Yeah. The nonlinear storytelling is to me, it was like, I think structurally the most, I mean, like when you're trying to like make a movie, it's like all these layers of like, how do you layer all the different aspects of the movie to say the same thing? Or if it's saying something different, it's like, it's feeding into the main thing. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
like the way you shoot it should complement the way you wrote it. And,
Hmm.
it, again, if you're deviating from that, you're doing it on purpose because you want to bring like the audience's attention to something.
Hmm.
So for me, it's like if the story was about trying to figure yourself out, then structuring it in this like back and forth way to me was like I from a storytelling perspective. And by the way, people can disagree with this. This is just like my thought process. um it was to me like it's a little bit like a mystery because I think figuring yourself out is a mystery, like, you know what I mean? So if you play it too linear, it's like, where's the mystery in that? And if the movie is at its core kind of a mystery of like, how did he get here, who the heck
Hmm.
is he, like
Hmm.
what choices did he make to end up in this like crappy situation, then like playing it like a mystery is like on the sort of narrative level, and then on the emotional level it's like you're trying to unpack that,
Hmm.
Hmm.
you know and then like kind of what you choose to go back to are in a way like little, they don't like play like breadcrumb trails per se, but
Hmm.
like emotionally, thematically, they're like emotional thematic breadcrumb trail to
Hmm.
like the emotional context for why he decides to do the thing he did that lands him in, a world of hurt, I guess. So I think that's why, because I think it's
Yeah.
just that's structurally like what I was trying to accomplish. It wasn't like I wasn't trying to really be stylistic at all. I don't even think the movie is like really trying to be super stylish. It's trying to be super naturalistic.
Hmm.
And when I do the cuts, like I was really, it's like flashbacks can be like really distracting and bad. So being aware of that, like what I tried to do to like mitigate that, but also try to make them like appealing was like finding like little threads,
Hmm.
like things that bridge you from past to present and present to past.
Yes.
Um, I read this book in college called like the Metamorphoses or something. It was like some Greek or Roman writer. And I remember it was like this like weird, it was like this crazy epic like poem or something. I think it was Roman. Yeah, he was a Roman writer. And I just remember thinking, like, it's like one of the few books I remember from college, but I remember thinking it was so cool because like uh it like every chapter had like a little weird thread. So the
Hmm.
beginning line of the chapter about another character that's like affected by the gods the beginning line is like uh sort of a continuation of the last sentence of the previous chapter, and they're
Hmm.
about different people. Like there's no, it's not like you're almost like in a different world. It's almost like an anthology.
Hmm.
And 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 the threads weren't like narrative per se. Like some of them were just like I'm making this up, but it's like the last line of one chapter would be like a bird sat on a branch and sang a song. And then the first line of the next chapter is like the bird's song drifted down onto so and so, and then you're
Hmm.
into the new thing. And so it wasn't like, and then it was like, and then in other cases it was direct, and then in other cases it was like a smell or whatever. Anyways, that's a super long-winded way of saying like I always remembered that, and I always thought that was such an incredible literary device. And I'm sure to a much less successful degree, I was like trying to do that. I was like trying to find that like little thread, like a turn of phrase or something that would like trigger a memory, or like the stove to
Yes.
the furnace where the dad is doing the horseshoeing, where he's like pounding the horseshoe. Anyways,
Hmm.
like that's kind of like I really wanted to try to do that as best as I could. And again, it's really up to the audience whether it works for them or not. I'm sure some
Right.
people will find it distracting, but that was the intention.
For sure. I remember saying in our review that oftentimes that nonlinear concept can really throw off a
Yeah.
film. But what did it for me is, funny enough, it's exactly what you're talking about. The way that each scene was connected. And the example that I used
Hmm.
was there's a moment where it's when he's speaking with, when True's speaking with his brother about the snare trap. And when he says something
Hmm.
about pop, it cuts back to the
Yeah.
trap going
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
dude,
Yeah.
that's so like, it ties
Yeah.
in so perfectly where I don't feel like I just got ripped out of the past, but instead
Hmm.
you've connected the two scenes
Yeah.
when you explain it with that book. Like that's so interesting
Yeah.
the way that works.
I hope that's interesting. I'm definitely like not trying to be like, oh, I read a really fancy book. I honestly can't even remember who wrote it, but I just remember that like
Mhm.
that device was like it's like a literary device, but I found myself like remembering it when I went to write this. I was like, gosh, I should do that. I should try to make these like little threads
Yeah.
that kind of go through it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
remember Gabe. That was like our big like disagreement on the episode. I think was
Hmm.
not in a bad way. It was more so like I think my whole thing was about it was like I was so enamored with what was happening in
Yeah,
past time that it
yeah,
was just
yeah.
kind of like going
I
against the
know.
grain of what I was liking. I was like, man, this whole story, I'm like, this is awesome. So I think it
yeah.
was disconnected. And
Yeah,
Gabe
I
actually made a great
honestly,
point.
it's funny though because like I've heard people say they prefer the survival stuff, and then I've heard people say I really just like want to stay in the family drama stuff.
Hmm.
Like I've heard both, and I think that's interesting. I mean both are threads that are working on the
Hmm.
same issue. You know,
Hmm.
and I just it's funny what really kind of grabs people. Like each storyline is like probably doing something different to
Hmm.
people. As as they're kind of working out the story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Um, I kind of wanted to, so you kind of mentioned there like some people disagreeing and whatnot, and I just
Mhm.
figured we would give you a kind of transparent question here of something that we
Yes.
were at least curious about in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
we had mentioned how at the end there is that clear closure with him
Hmm.
in the romantic part of it, but we had both wondered
Yeah,
why there's less closure with the family,
yeah,
especially with the
yeah,
scene where he's speaking with his father after the
yeah,
funeral. And we both
yeah.
kind of thought like that scene would end with them. He asked him
A
if he
hug.
could
Mhm.
go down with him, and we were like,
Totally.
surely this will go into a scene of them writing together and having
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
closure, but it just never quite
yeah.
came. So I just want to know, like, what was the thought
No,
on
that's a good it's a good question. I think this is like again, these are choices I made.
that?
Like
Hmm.
they're choices I made, and they're choices I stand by, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean it doesn't bother people. So totally valid criticism. I think tonal, one thing I'm trying to do tonally in the movie is, and he kind of talks about it, the dad talks about it when they're having lunch, the three of them.
Hmm.
And he says like bittersweet leaves a taste in your mouth that just doesn't wash out.
Hmm.
I think that's very true in life. I
Mhm.
think you kind of remember that stuff that's like almost great or almost perfect or like you almost got it. You almost remember that stuff more than you remember like the outright win. Not
Hmm.
always, but a lot of time.
Hmm.
And I think in the end of the movie, two things. I tonally wanted to stick three things. So tonally, I wanted to like stick this sort of like bittersweet landing. Like
Hmm.
he goes to the girl, he closes that loop. They reunite, and I think that's super sweet. The
Hmm.
bitter part of that is like the family is obviously still, you can't like the family is still going to be dealing with, you know, and I don't know, am I okay to spoil stuff here?
Yeah, no,
We
I
usually do.
mean,
Yeah, we usually do.
especially if we're mentioning it now, like anyone listening
Okay, all
knows
right.
there will be a
Well, yeah, I
spoiler.
mean like yeah, it's they're going to still be dealing with like
Hmm.
death, I'll
Hmm.
just say, and that's like not going to go away. So like I wanted to sort of accomplish like it's you're not going to like tie that up neatly
Hmm.
because that stuff just doesn't necessarily go away. I think it softens with time. Um and I think the third thing is like just in my and this like I mean this is like bad filmmaking 101, but like in my mind, I'm like, he didn't abandon his family. Like when you're seeing that, I mean, he did, but when he leaves, but in the end, when you're sort of seeing like who he's become, I mean, in my head, he's still like relatively local. He's still relatively nearby. He didn't like blow off his family. Like I'm sure he still goes and feeds his horse,
Hmm.
and make sure his horse is getting shoes every 6 weeks or whatever. Like it
Hmm.
just, I don't know. It's just a choice I made because I wanted like a tone. I just like wanted a really strong tone. And I also wanted to emphasize he's choosing like a life for himself and he's choosing to like
Mhm.
individuate. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I
Hmm.
think like if you showed him like going back to the family, it could have been done, but I think the sort of again the decision I made is like if you show him like kind of leaning back into his family, like I kind of wanted to show him like making kind of the choice about like choosing his future. You know what I mean? And that's not necessarily at the expense of his family.
Hmm.
It's just like that's where I wanted to like put the emphasis.
Mhm.
For sure. And I think that like it's less of a criticism on my half and more of like I was wondering why that happened. So hearing you explain that, like
It
that,
totally can be a criticism though. I
right, but
don't
like it
mind. I
wasn't
think it's like I think there's like definitely like, oh, why doesn't he go hug his dad?
right.
And I'm like, I mean, I think there were probably a lot of hugs that happened.
Yeah.
And one thing a lot of people don't catch is like he when he gets into his car, you'll notice like when his at the very end in the montage, you'll see him bring his leg in. If you look really closely, you'll see something about his leg.
Mm. I'll have to go watch that.
I was gonna say, oh no, I have to watch it again.
Well, my dad's watching right now. I'll just text him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I think one thing we
Like
did
it's so, like time
oh
has
yeah, yeah.
passed is all I'm
Yes,
saying, and
Yeah.
yes,
stuff has happened.
yes.
Like that black foot of his was not necessarily salvageable, is what
Hmm.
I'll say.
Yeah, fair enough. I think one thing we did mention why we thought maybe the reason you, and it was just, just us thinking of reasons. We thought
Yeah.
maybe the reason you did go with closing the relationship closure instead was
Mhm.
she was to us, Allie was pretty clearly the best person for him in the entire story.
Sure.
She was the most
Yeah.
confident in his art and wanted
Yeah.
him to really pursue the art. And so we, in
Yeah.
that sense, we thought it did make sense that you would pick that over the family as she was
Yeah.
more supportive for him. So I like that you mentioned that, like it's showcasing that he's ready to kind of start his own path, go down his own
Yeah.
path over her.
Exactly.
That's a great
Exactly.
path. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you
Exactly.
for that clarity. I love that.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, and I'm a sucker for some of those, bittersweet. I guess for some reason I was trying to consider like that. I think of La La Land when I think of movies that don't end how you want it to end, where it's like,
Yeah.
why? But it's like, it makes
I
sense.
know.
So
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You like there is kind of like a bitterness to like what the family's probably still going through, but like
Mhm.
I really wanted to end a movie the way I want to see a movie end, which is like you go through all that stuff, like give like throw the people a bone. You know what I mean? Like when you've gone through all that shit, like
Yeah.
sorry if you I don't swear on the
no, we
podcast,
we
but
do.
when you go through all that stuff, okay, you yeah, you just like I know I kind of like a little bit of like even a glimmer of hope or happiness. I that's just the way
No,
I am.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
When things are like a big downer, you're just like, what the hell?
I love that you
And I
mentioned
do
that.
like some downer movies. Like
Yeah.
my probably one of my favorite shows of all time that I watch every year, sometimes twice a year, is Lonesome Dove.
mm,
And it's like I always forget how freaking sad it is. It's
Yeah.
like you're like, what the? Why do I do this to myself? You know what I mean?
yes,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like that you mentioned that little glimmer of hope because we did also say that if, I mean, again, we're definitely getting into spoilers here, that if True would have actually shot himself, what an
Oh my God,
unfulfilling
what
ending.
a
Like we were
horrible
like,
movie!
I was like, that last
What a
scene,
horrible movie
I
that'd
was gonna be
be.
so mad.
there were
Oh
literally,
yeah, I would have deserved it. That would have just been like,
and I gotta tell you,
what a crappy movie that would have been.
showing the flashbacks of him as a kid, I was
Oh
weeping,
yeah, I
man.
was
I
crying
was
then.
Oh good,
weeping, and I was like, man, this is
yeah.
really how it's gonna end. So that little hope of him missing
Oh
was like,
yeah,
oh,
yikes. That
thank
would have
goodness.
sucked. Yeah,
Exactly.
I get that a lot from people. They're like, dude, I thought you'd kill him. What the heck, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I know that would have been what the heck. I'd be mad at myself.
Yeah, no, you did it right. You got everybody hook, line, and sinker for
Yeah.
sure. 'Cause
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
bit it. So,
Yeah.
so you got one?
Sure, I have. I guess well, I was gonna ask maybe this is kind of could be answered short. Tom Skerritt, very
Yeah.
classic actor. His
Yeah.
monologue at the end of
Yeah.
towards the end of the movie, was that written or was that improvised? You know, where he drops the name
No, that's
title.
written. That's all written
Okay,
for
because
sure.
we talked about that being such a great moment in the movie.
It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
meaningful.
You gotta like find, like, I wanted to find the title.
Hmm.
And I'm glad like there were t discussions along the way of like people asking me to change the title and stuff. And I always stuck to my guns on that
Hmm.
because I was like, man, we like find the title in the movie. It's like what it's all about. It's a broken narrative, broken
Mm,
Yeah.
heart, broken home, broken, you know, broke is a term in like the Western world, like a broke horse is like a horse that you ride.
Hmm.
You know, so it just worked on a lot of levels. So yeah, I mean, that's like a big kind of thematic moment for the
yeah.
movie, I guess, when he's kind of breaking it down, so to speak, like
Hmm.
kind of I don't know, like a little bit of a what would you call that? Like a ghost of Christmas yet to come. Like you could end up like Tom Skerritt alone in a little cabin, you
Mhm.
know, if you don't figure yourself out.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
You kind of talked about the cabin, and earlier you had mentioned the two different shooting
Mhm.
times. I just want to know
Yeah,
what was the experience like of shooting in Montana?
yeah.
I mean, it was beautiful for the film.
Super
So,
good. Montana
yeah.
was great. Like I really like talking about the production process because it was like really challenging, but a lot of fun, like
Hmm.
especially when things worked. Like the cabin and the truck were like two of my favorite sets, I guess you could call it, because like
Hmm.
most of the cabin work we shot in the summer, actually.
Hmm.
So all those interiors are summer. It's just you know, we did stuff like had someone like drop little flakes of whatever through holes in the roof, and
Right.
you know, you just use good sound design and whatnot. But
Mhm.
um, the magic trick I enjoyed doing the most was like the when he rips up the seats in his truck.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah,
cool.
we shot that in the dead of summer. And we had like a I found a truck in like a junkyard that was the same gen Dodge.
Hmm.
And and so what we did is we shot a lot of the interstitial stuff like going in and getting out in the winter, you know.
Hmm.
But then when he's like committed and he's in there, that's all just like the dummy truck. And so we just found one in a junkyard that, you know, they basically were like, "Oh yeah, you can tear it up and just bring it back." So it, like really didn't cost anything.
Wow.
And that was a lot of fun because you're nervous when you're shooting that. You're like, "Oh my God, are we going to get to, you know, the editing room and then it's just going to look like crap?"
Hmm.
And we sold it in, I think. I think like you're not really broken, you don't like break your suspension of disbelief. I mean, at least I didn't call BS on it. I don't, audiences might feel different, but
Not at
as
all.
we're cutting it together, I'm like, dang, like this feels like he's just in the same truck
Yeah.
and it's winter. But it was
Yeah.
like um there's a shot in the movie where he's like crossing the like a little creek on his
Yeah.
horse.
Yes.
He's riding out to rope the bull.
Hmm.
That same guy's ranch, his name was Phil Ralston, had like a little garage. So on the same day that we shot that, we like went over to his garage after lunch and we did all the interiors of the truck, like
Hmm.
tearing it apart and stuff like that. So his garage became our little sound stage.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that, so that's
That's
awesome.
so yeah, that's so
Yeah, that's the
fascinating to hear
stuff
that.
like as like a film, like when you're making a movie, like that's where you're like, ah, this is fun because it's like it just feels like a magic trick.
Yeah.
And you're just hoping that you like do the magic trick well enough that people buy it.
I would have never even thought.
No,
Yeah,
never.
I mean, it worked. Like there's you just in that scene you're so I think what helps as well with that scene is you're so invested as to why is he
yeah,
doing this? Like what's his
yeah,
plan? You're not
yeah,
thinking about any of that kind of stuff and you're just invested in the whole story. So yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome. But
And I always like heard stories of people like freezing to death in their cars and stuff like that. And I was always like, my question was like, why didn't they tear up the seats and just like wrap themselves in the like
Yeah.
insulation?
yeah,
There's so much like memory foam and stuff in there and like leather or cloth. Like I feel like you could survive at least for a little longer just doing that. So that
yeah.
that's
No,
where
it's kind
that
of
came from.
genius. I don't think
That's
I've ever seen
awesome.
that either before. Like where I was
No,
like, man, I
never.
never
Yeah.
even considered like actually cutting the chairs
This
off. That's like
isn't like
genius.
official advice, so
No,
nobody.
no, no. But it's just like the hat was like pretty cool. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
clever
It all
actually.
Yeah.
it all made sense for sure. But yeah, I was just really
Yeah.
fascinated with Montana. And there's a shot
Yeah.
earlier in the film when he's walking through the snow and it's a above shot
Yeah.
from an bird's eye view. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that's just a beautiful shot of him just trudging
Yeah.
through the snow. So Montana.
Shooting in Montana was like really fun. It was
Mhm.
very like it felt pretty serious at times. Like when we shot in the winter, we had like a polar vortex.
Mm.
So, and I'm sure you guys are very familiar with cold weather.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But like we had like negative 25, I think,
Oh,
on the day where Wyatt like pops out of the snow. That was like wind chill of negative 25. Cameras like the batteries would shut off and there are all those like technical things, but
yeah.
I always tell people like we kind of went there to like shoot in a storm, so the worse the weather got, like the better
Yeah.
like my attitude was. So I was like, man,
Mhm.
this is great. And my contingency plan was always like if the sun comes out, I had certain locations chosen that were in shadow. So like when
Mm.
he crosses the river and steps in the water,
Mhm.
that was like a super bluebird sky day. But we chose a location that would have been in the afternoon, like in shadow.
Okay.
So it still felt like
Yeah.
a snowy, messed up day. And we actually did have to add some
Mhm.
like snow to it, like some of that CGI, which was like a whole different beast, like teaching like a CGI team from South Africa, like how to do snow because they
Yeah.
were the
Yeah.
only ones we could afford. And I spent like months working that in to the point where I don't think like people can tell which scenes are real snow and which are fake. But I like count that as one of my greatest accomplishments in this movie was like 30 revisions to get like snow looking real when it's fake.
Yeah.
There was a lot of real snow, but there was inconsistency. Like some shots, you would have a flurry and it would look great, and then 5 minutes later there'd be no snow falling. So
Yeah.
you have to feather it in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
For sure.
I became an expert very fast on like how to make snow
Mhm.
CGI snow look super real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't I mean you fooled us. You couldn't
Yeah.
Yeah,
Honestly, it's kind of just a test to like I think a lot of like like I'm like okay, it kind of attests like the passion of the movie to an extent because of like
yeah,
a lot of companies and movies like that would have just not shot it in the negative
yeah,
25.
just
Like they would
pure
have
yeah.
just
CG.
like so that's pretty crazy to consider like that was
Yeah,
like a
no cell service. Like that location is called the Big Hole, which is it's an hour from like the nearest small town, like not even a big city.
ooh,
So it's
Wow.
really, really, really remote. And
Yeah.
I think another part of like the advantage to that was like, I think just like deep down, everyone felt a little bit like worried. And I think that like when you don't have the luxury of a big production, like just
Mhm.
capitalizing on what is actually felt for real is
Mhm.
huge. Like Wyatt being super uncomfortable and upset about being buried and just constantly having to trudge through snow and he wasn't feeling good and he just had like a baby, like he had like a 3 month old baby or something at the time, maybe 2 month. No, like 1 month old baby.
Yeah. Oof.
Um, and he's just like miserable and you can feel that and it works. So
Yeah.
we just kind of
yeah,
like
it
leaned
does.
into what felt real.
Yeah, it's about as immersive as it gets. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's awesome. That's really cool. Caleb, you want to throw another one?
Yeah, I guess I didn't have this one planned, but it just kind of came to me while we were talking. I was thinking of a moment that I haven't talked about yet that I just love so much of this movie. It's the scene
Mhm.
where they're dancing and
Hmm.
it's like
Yeah.
it's the oranges and it's like shimmery and
Yeah.
it's very gazy. So I
Yeah.
was gonna ask kind of off that, and you could maybe
Yeah.
elaborate on that scene too as well. But like, do you have a favorite scene? I know
Mm.
it's your glorious creation, but do you have one that
Uh,
just kind of sits with you?
oh man, I think when I watch it, I've watched this movie so many times. It's kind of like hard to watch at this point. I still love it, but it's
Right.
I've had to watch it clinically so many times.
Hmm.
It's funny though, recently watching it like people will write things like I like the scene and I'll just go watch it and I try to like watch it kind of through the lens of somebody enjoying it for the first time. And I'll admit like I get a little teared up. Like it's fun to watch it again and feel like passion again for it.
Mhm.
But I think if I had scenes that I really like the fence building scene with his dad
Yeah.
when they're working on the fence together. I think, but that's personal because that's like me and my dad. So that's um that's probably why I like that. I like how it came together. I like what it's doing visually and thematically, and it kind of just like it just sort of works and it feels tight and it feels like well constructed.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But it also feels very real to people who kind of know what it's like to work with your dad and to like fix fence and yell at each other. But I also um, really love the art stuff, like the art
Yeah.
gallery. That was like
Yep.
the only set that we built for the whole thing. So
Mm.
our production designer like really pulled out all the stops for that. She curates art shows and stuff like that. So she did a really good job with that. And like a lot of the artists are people I know and that I'm friends with. So that was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, I there's a lot of scenes I really love, and sometimes I like scenes better given like the watch.
Yeah.
But I like the fence scene, and I really like the art gallery scene, I think.
Yeah. I know it's a tough question because like
No, it's fine. I
if I
mean,
made a movie, I'd be
my
like,
answer
I love
might
all
have been
these.
different yesterday, though. No,
Yeah.
there's stuff where I'm even like, I could have done that better or whatever.
Well,
Hmm.
yeah.
But there's stuff where I'm like, yeah, I think we stuck the landing on that one for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, I think I mentioned in our review that the art gallery scene is probably my favorite scene of the entire movie.
Oh, cool.
It's
Yeah.
it what the thing that gets it for me is he talks about in the film constantly how there's nothing else but bronking. Like that's the most important thing.
Hmm.
And in that
Hmm.
moment at the end when Allie has to come up and tell him we got to leave, like that's the most passion I feel like you see in his eyes in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like he's
Yeah.
feeling the arts on such a deep level that like for a moment he's not thinking about bronking, and that like that's at least how I interpreted it. And it was like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that moment he talked about his purpose. And for a moment, like to me, that was his purpose. And he kind of ties that back,
Yeah.
like where in the very end scene, he draws the picture and puts it in Allie's car. Like that, I just love that
Yeah.
constant art.
Yeah. Yeah. The art thing, like that's like a huge like point of the movie is like finding, who you're going to become.
Mm-hmm.
And like art kind of just in like the same way like the bronc riding is like kind of the metaphor for something that wants you to like get off its back or doesn't want you around anymore. Like the art is art, but it's also like just like creativity. And it doesn't even necessarily mean you have to like choose to be an artist, but it's just like having the creativity to like reinvent yourself.
Right.
Um, and so like that's sort of what that is. Um, yeah, the art gallery, like, and the artist who does all the sketching is a friend named Teal Blake, great artist. And it was a lot of fun because I've known him for a long time, and it was like a lot of fun to be able to like use his work in
Mm-hmm.
the movie, and then some of his paintings are in the art gallery.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things about the art gallery that like I think why it did really well was like when he's like observing that painting at the end, the Maynard Dixon. Some of it too is like it's awe. It's kind of like a fear of it too. Like he's so passionate, but it's like also like sometimes like when you see the thing that like you're like, oh, I could do this or I want this, can also be like really intimidating and you're like, am I worthy? Like, am I worthy to pursue this? So
Mm-hmm.
that was like a big thing there too. And I thought Wyatt did a
Mm.
really good job like emoting that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you about Dennis Quaid a little bit. I mean, the guy
Yeah.
is an absolute legend. He's been in so
Hmm.
many phenomenal films, but I was curious, not only what was it like working with him, but also
Hmm.
having him in a role that isn't the front and center, Like usually you see
Yeah.
he's the main character, and it was
Yeah.
interesting to see him in this role.
Yeah, he was really supportive, like, and like, no pun intended. Like, he was like, he read the script. He really, I think he saw what we were trying to do. Dennis
Mhm.
is a very generous guy in that way. Like, if he likes something, like, he'll support it. And I think he really just enjoyed the authenticity of the script.
Mhm.
Um, I remember getting like a phone call from him, and I felt like a big moment. You know, it was a big moment
Oh,
for me.
for
Like, you're
sure.
like, whoa, I still have the voicemail like saved.
That's awesome.
But he was just like, I love this script. It's like one of the best ones I've read in a long time, and it's so
Wow.
authentic. Um, and that was great because like he took a chance on me,
Mhm.
and if he hadn't, this movie probably wouldn't have gotten made.
That's
Um, he's super easy to work with. I mean, he's got opinions, which
Mhm.
like when you're a first time director is can be intimidating because you're like, you know, you have this hierarchy on set, but if you're a first time director, everybody is like, but how much does he really know? Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And people are going to naturally be like, well, Dennis Quaid is like the pro,
Yes.
like it's like what he thinks. So one advantage I had was like I just knew the material better than everybody, like not
Mhm.
just like what was written, but like what it's about. So if it was about horseshoeing or if it was about
Mhm.
riding horses or if it was about talking about farming, I was like, I just know a lot more than everybody on
Mhm.
that set. So I kind of like no, nobody was ever difficult, but it was like in order to like maintain that very healthy professional relationship between somebody who's a lot more experienced and has a lot more success than I do,
Right.
and my job as a director, where like they still respect you and listen to you,
Mhm.
having having like authentic knowledge of the source material outside of just the script, it like I think it kept like a really healthy balance, like where from a storytelling perspective, he could like chime in and be like, well, what if I did it this way or whatever, and I
Right.
would trust him. But you know, if I was like, well, no, like a farmer wouldn't say that, and he'd be like,
Mhm.
okay, you know, like it was good. It was good like that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's really cool.
I just want to say something that it's just an interjection. I think it's just to applaud you even more. It's the fact that Dennis Quaid said that's one of the best scripts he's ever read, and his one of his movies was just nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think it's pretty incredible that something that
yeah.
I just
Dennis has been like he's a legend. Like
Yeah, it is.
he was in a movie like I mean, this is going way back, but and he wasn't the star of it, but he was like in one of my favorite sports movies of all time called Breaking Away. Have you ever heard of that?
I have. My dad's a love.
It,
My
but
oh
dad loves Dennis Quaid, so
yeah,
I've.
yeah, Breaking Away is like one of the coolest sports movies ever. It's about like cycling. It's
Mhm.
like a Midwestern kid who like gets obsessed with like road biking.
Mhm.
And I think like some Italian like cyclists come to his town. I mean, it was made in the 70s. I can't remember the director. It was like Peter Yates or something like that.
Mhm.
But it was so cool. Like that's like such a great movie. And I remember at dinner one night, like he just started to talk about a movie, and I heard the director's name, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's talking about Breaking Away." And then he has all these great stories about incredible directors from like the 70s and the 80s and stuff, like
Wow.
movies and projects that you're like, man, I really feel like I'm hearing some cool like I don't know. It's not like the salacious Hollywood stuff. Like
Mhm.
I don't have any interest in that. But it's like that really great like working
Mhm.
actor, working craftsman type knowledge that I'm like, yeah, I'd love to hear more about like what that guy did or how he comported himself or like how he thought about things. So it
Yeah.
was really cool on that level too, because you don't really think of Dennis as being like an actor who was working in the 70s, but he was, you know,
Right. Yeah.
like, you know, in the 80s too, like in these great decades of
mhm.
like hidden sort of gems, like small gems and great sort of film.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he
We
had great stories about his brother, Randy, too, which are awesome.
That's cool. We talk about Dennis quite a bit because 2025 has been the year for Jack Quaid, his son. He's been in
I
so
know.
many
Oh my
movies, and
gosh.
we've been
Yeah.
eating it up. I mean, he's killing
Dude,
it.
he's
Yeah.
so talented.
He
Yeah, he's
is.
Yeah.
crushing it. I
But
don't know Jack at all. I've never met him. I hope to meet him because he's such a talent.
he is such a talent. He's
Well,
awesome. I
yeah.
just watched one of his films today, Neighborhood Watch, and I loved it. I
Oh,
was like,
cool.
man,
I
he
haven't seen that. Is it pretty good?
it's really good. He
Cool.
amazing in
Cool.
it, and his chemistry with Jeffrey Dean Morgan is outstanding. Those two.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's
I'll
so
check it
fun.
out.
It's so fun. But kind of talking about actors, I wanted to ask, was there a moment that kind of sticks out to you where maybe Wyatt did kind of like improvise a little bit or went off of something or asked you to
Hmm.
change a moment? Like, was there something that he did?
Oh, let me see. Let me
Yeah, I know.
see.
That might be a bit of a really have to reach
No, 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 no.
deep
It's a
there.
really good question. I might have to reach back into my sort of like mental library. I know a lot of his like scenes with Allie Auden Thornton,
Hmm.
who I think is really, really good.
She was
I think
great.
Auden is
Phenomenal.
such a great actress.
Hmm.
Very like professional, like super classically trained actress. She went to Juilliard and is just like she's just really cool. I really like Auden.
Hmm.
Um, but there were definitely some like ad lib moments, like when they're on their date and like he's drawing the little picture for her.
Hmm.
And definitely some in the sort of breakup scene or whatever. Like I again, I just wanted them to have like natural chemistry, and I think um some of my written dialogue like played really well and enhanced their chemistry, but
Hmm.
sometimes it didn't, sometimes it felt like words that just you're like, they wouldn't say that. So they'd like play with it, and they did a lot of like rehearsals and stuff. And
Yeah.
I wish I had like a concrete example. If I think of
No,
one, I
no.
will like text
Yeah.
it or email it to you,
Yeah.
which is the
Sure.
lamest answer of all time.
No, that's
No,
awesome
But
because yeah,
if something occurs to me while we're talking, I'll circle back to it.
sure,
I'm
sure.
sure there's a great example of something
Mhm.
he ad-libbed, but um, it wasn't like a lot of like ad-libbing, like making it up. I mean, we always knew what the assignment was. We always knew what every scene was trying to do and like
Right.
where it was getting us and where it
Hmm.
was coming from. So it wasn't like super ad-libby, but it was like the goal was always to make it feel super natural.
Hmm.
Because we didn't have a lot of time. We didn't have like the benefit of a ton of rehearsal. So you're just like you're trying to make it feel real. And so you let good actors
Hmm.
just have chemistry and just sort of talk to each other. Because just I think trying to make this small movie feel like really choreographed would have been weird and awkward. So you kind of lean into the other direction where you're just like just let it feel as natural as possible.
Hmm.
And you just that's sometimes the director's job is to just pick the path that's gonna have the best outcome.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like what you exactly pictured you were gonna do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I think we mentioned that in the episode that the
Hmm.
romance felt incredibly real.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
realest part of it that we talked about was the breakup scene because I mentioned how that's the moment of kind of like he'd been in denial almost before he kept lying to her about the
Hmm.
taking the medicine and whatnot, but that's the moment where he just admits like she says you're a great girl and I'm leaving, like I'm a liar and I
Hmm.
like that's such a
Hmm.
meaningful scene where he's like
Mm.
that's the lowest like he's admitting everything right there. So
Yeah.
we thought the romance was just brilliant.
That scene was really good because like they just it was short and sweet and to the
Hmm.
point and it didn't draw it out too much, I didn't think. Um, I mean, yeah, it was great. And like the light was breaking, like it was about to disappear
Hmm.
behind the mountain. So it was like we literally had like one or two takes of that before the light just totally changed and it wouldn't have
Yeah.
felt the same. And I just remember thinking like, I think that was pretty good, you know?
no, I think that scene is so good
Yeah.
because it's of how much is not said. Like the subtlety of the scene is just
Yeah.
like Auden Thornton's
Yeah.
reaction to that scene is very
Yeah.
subliminal
Real.
and it's just very great. Like,
Yeah. And she like protests, but she's not like overbearing. She just lets him go. And
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's like bittersweet again.
yeah,
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, again, that's yeah, I'm glad you guys agree with how I feel about it. I always am like hesitant to like state that's how it is because movies kind of become what people react to them, a little bit. They kind of become that. So I agree with you guys, but
Well,
I hope
no,
we
many
more
other people
so
do too.
yeah, we
yeah.
more so agree with you, but
Yeah.
No, I'm a sucker for
Yeah.
those. I will say I'm
Yeah.
of the four of us, I'm a sucker for the romance movies. I love them so
Yeah.
much, and this
Yeah.
felt like
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's
one of those
yeah, it's
great
so key.
connections that was so good that sticks out to me. So
Yeah.
again, just want to say that.
Thank you.
yeah, it's such a we I think the word we kept using was it was a very human story.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very real, like personal
Yeah.
and close. And
Yeah.
that relationship, and you kind of mentioned Thornton, like she absolutely did everything and more with that role. I mean, and
Yeah.
that scene
Yeah.
especially, like you said, she pushes back a bit, but there's so much emotion, like sadness, but also anger, you know. She's
Yeah, it's like who wants
great.
to get into a fight with their
Yeah, it's not
boyfriend
worth
on
it.
their when he's at his brother's funeral, basically.
Mhm.
It's like at a certain point, everyone's just like, what's the point? You know,
Yeah,
it's like
Yeah.
there's kind of
absolutely.
like, all right, I'm done fighting. Just
Mhm.
go do your thing if you're gonna do your thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
that's kind of like where we were trying to be.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned like we were just talking about the brother. I want to talk a
Yeah,
little bit here about your brother. I think it's funny that you mentioned
yeah,
it. I was going to bring up, I
yeah.
absolutely adore Land of Bad. I
Oh, good. Oh,
loved that
great.
movie. It was such a good time. Like I was so happy
Cool.
when I sat down and
Yeah,
watched that. But I was just curious, what kind of a role has he played in your film career and vice versa? How have you guys kind of like
yeah,
worked together in ways?
yeah. We've always been involved with each other's
Hmm.
um projects. There's
Hmm.
a few that like I wasn't officially involved in, and there's a few that he's not officially involved with me. Like he doesn't
Hmm.
have any official involvement on this one, but of course, he's my brother and he's one of my closest confidants. So very involved, like like I'll watch cuts of his movies and give him my feelings or read screenplays if he gets sent the screenplay.
Hmm.
I'll give him my opinion and vice versa. So he helped. I should take that back. He did help me shoot a bunch of inserts on this movie, like all the close-ups of like the art, like the napkins
Hmm.
and stuff.
Mm.
That was stuff that he and I shot just in my kitchen. So what we did to like do that, I don't know if you guys are interested in this, but I'm going to tell you
We're
anyways. But
interested in
like,
all
Sure,
of them.
sure, yeah.
so like, we're like matching in. This is like one of my brothers and my favorite thing to do because we've always like when you have like limited time, you don't waste time on inserts. You can get those later.
Hmm.
You don't want to waste like precious time with talent and crew and overtime and all that stuff. Like inserts are like get it later if you can. Go steal that later. And my brother's a really good shooter. He came up as a cinematographer. He's got a lot of great cameras and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, so like what we would do is we'd like watch the scene. And for instance, if it's like he's in a diner and he's sketching something on like a red plastic tray,
Hmm.
like what we did is I kept obviously those little sketches. And then we went to like CVS and we just bought a bunch of binders and we found the colors of whatever was in the background. So if it was like a red like plastic tray, I found like a red binder or a red folder.
Mm.
One was like a blue wallpaper, so I got like a blue folder. And we just like use like soft focus and it's usually my
Mm.
hand or my wife's hand or whatever, whoever, if it was a female holding the sketch or it was a male holding a sketch, it was just like I don't know, stuff like that again, it's just like
That's
fun to
cool.
do because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, can we make it match in? And most of them do. I mean, all of them do. Technically, like they
You,
they,
you
they
kind of
wouldn't.
mentioned
But
there, like, if we want to hear that, that's the most fascinating stuff right
Yeah,
there.
I
I
love
mean,
that
that.
stuff's fun to
that's
me.
so
I love that
cool.
stuff. And it's fun to do it with your brother. I can
Hmm.
I can send you guys a picture later. Like um we just like I have like terrible linoleum well, I do have linoleum, but fluorescent lights in my kitchen.
Yeah.
So we just like pinned a white sheet, like just draped a white
Yeah.
sheet
Yep.
That's
below them.
crazy.
And then we just like stood in my kitchen and just like held stuff in front of like, folders and binders, like cheap stuff we could get for like, 45 cents or something.
That's
That's so
I didn't
cool.
So
consider that.
that's the long way around to saying we're very involved. We have like three or four different things we're trying to get going right now.
Mm.
He was living in LA for a long time, but he just moved back up to where around where I live. So we spent a lot of time together and work together on stuff, and it's the best. It's like it's such a tough business full of like, frankly, like all kinds of people, good, bad, and otherwise. So it's good to have family in the business because we didn't have any connections to the business when we got into it,
Wow.
and it's a very like connection based business. Like
Yeah.
that can really like decide your future or not. So sort of forging that trail together. Yeah, him definitely ahead of me, but doing it together is meaningful and it's somebody you can trust.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's kind of one of my questions that I had down here that I was hesitant to ask, but I'm curious is do you
Yeah.
know what might be next in your filmography? Something that,
Mm.
that without telling too
As
much,
far
like
as
what can
like
we get as a
directing
teaser?
or
Yeah.
writing or
Directing,
what?
writing,
Like,
maybe, whatever you feel.
I mean, I definitely have some writing projects with my brother. Those will probably happen before anything that I direct next. I don't, unless something like fell into my lap tomorrow, which is very unlikely, it's probably going to be a movie that I write and
Hmm.
that my brother directs. We have another big sci-fi action movie that's kind of like an adaptation of The Heart of Darkness. Um, and that one is pretty close to going. Um, and we have another movie with Russell Crowe that's kind of um a Roman versus the uh the Druids, like the last Druids versus Constantius and Constantine,
Okay.
that we wrote that's like gonna go. I don't know when, but it's gonna go. So
Yeah.
those will be cool. I mean, things can always fall apart. You get used to like you
Hmm.
get used to things like being really close and then not happening. But I have a good feeling both of those things are going to happen.
Well,
Right.
those are our genres right there.
I was about to say,
Yeah,
Caleb and I have probably like I talked about earlier how as kids we would write stories, and
yeah,
they were either sci-fi, fantasy, or mythology.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's super cool. The one with Russell Crowe about
Mhm.
Rome and the Druids, the Caledonians, is
mhm,
a really cool script. It's kind of
nice.
like that last emperor before the Romans went from being pagans to Christian, and
Mhm,
it's Constantius to Constantine,
mhm,
and it's like their final campaign up in Caledonia, so like interacting with the Druids and the like holdouts, like the last holdout tribes up there.
yeah.
It's cool. It's a good script. Russell Crowe's great to play like the Druid King.
Yeah.
Anyways, probably shouldn't say like too much. I don't know,
No,
but
no,
No, I
that's
know.
I
we
mean,
don't want to
there's
get
like
you.
I think there's a press release out there somewhere, so I'm not giving anything away that isn't
Yeah.
already
Well,
published. But
We'll be there.
yeah. On
those things will definitely come out before anything I direct
yeah.
next. I think.
On Letterboxd, it's got it listed as The Last Druid, directed by your brother, and then it's got
Yeah,
Russell Crowe. So that's all it has.
yeah,
It
yeah.
even has
It's real.
yeah, it's even got a little synopsis already. So I was
Cool.
curious what that one was because they don't have like the
Yeah,
poster or anything. So I was like,
yeah. No, it's early days, very early days.
what a fascinating concept.
Yeah,
Like
that sounds
like
awesome.
Yeah,
Caleb
it
said,
could
we
it,
we will be
it's a good
there.
script.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely.
It's a
I'm
good script.
stoked for that one.
Yeah.
Just kind of give you. I just wanted to ask two little fun questions here at the end.
Yeah.
What's a genre that you'd like to kind of explore for your next directing film? I mean, if that gives away something,
Mm.
then don't. It doesn't have to be for your next one. But in terms of a director, like, what's a genre you really want to explore as the director?
Mm.
Because there's so many good ones as we know. I mean, you can make
Yeah.
something good out of every genre.
I honestly I love movies that are like kind of like modern mysteries.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I love subcultures.
Hmm.
I've anyways, yeah, I always love like little kind of like gumshoe type movies, like people putting together breadcrumbs, more so than broke. I mean, I know I said that's sort of like a mystery. I
Hmm.
like actual genre type
Hmm.
mystery,
Right.
like Double Indemnity or like a Hitchcock kind of
Mm.
show. Like I
Right.
love those types of thriller mysteries.
Hmm.
I mean, I have some, but I'd love to do something like that, but set kind of modern day.
Hmm. Kind of like
Anyways, that's what I'd say. I like those modern,
right.
like piecing together some sort of like oddity or, but within like a subculture. I think subcultures are the most fun thing to watch,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I love like getting into the nitty-gritty of like a subculture's language and shared culture and
Right.
their norms and the taboos and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes me think of the Knives Out series. I love those
Yeah.
movies. Kind
Yeah.
of get that mystery and
Well,
subculture
I
going.
I have a movie
Yeah.
suggestion you made that just to throw my hat in there. I think I think you may like the movie. Have you heard of the movie Ash by Flying Lotus that just came out? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I
I think
haven't seen it, but
I think that
I've heard of it.
I feel like you would like that movie. Subtle
Okay, I'll
plug.
check it out for sure.
Well, with the
Yeah.
sci-fi too, the
Yeah.
sci-fi and the mystery aspect.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
definitely check that out.
Then kind of following that one up, and this can just be anybody ever, but who is an actor that in a dream world you would love to just have star in your film? I mean,
Gosh,
it can be
dude, that's
multiple. You
such a
can't
tough
just.
one.
I know it can. You can give me two,
I don't
three
know.
or four if you don't want to just pick one. I mean,
Um,
tough one.
I mean, this is like I've always really been, yeah, I've always really been a fan of I like Jesse Plemons a lot. I think he's a really
Mm-hmm.
cool, interesting actor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, I don't, yeah, I like Shia LaBeouf a lot. I just
Oh
think
yeah.
Shia LaBeouf is one of the great actors of our time.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Peanut Butter Falcon. I thought that was like
Yeah.
one of the best movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's probably, I mean, I know there's like more like quote unquote important movies, but like not to me. I think movies that like really just get you, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
that movie is great. That is a great
Hmm.
movie.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a ton.
Yeah.
There's so many great actors. Robert Pattinson. I
Oh,
don't know. Like all
he's
these
real
Please.
guys.
popular right now. Pattinson's booked
Yeah, but I'm
forever.
like, I don't know.
Oh
Who
yeah,
knows?
Pattinson's
Like, who
awesome.
knows? Pattinson's great. Gosh, I'm sure there's a million that
Oh yeah.
For
I'll think
sure.
of like the second we're done. But yeah, those three are really strong, great young actors that I think have a lot to say,
For sure.
and they've all had like really interesting, varied careers, and they've shown
Yeah.
their range. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, Plemons is super interesting. I
Mm-hmm.
loved him in the show Fargo. He was really good in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shia's had such an interesting life as well. Like his
I
story,
know, I
his
know.
film Honey Boy is one of my
Yeah,
favorite movies of his. That movie gets
yeah,
me so emotional. It's
yeah,
so good. So
yeah.
that
I worked with that producer on The Signal, Brian
oh my
Oh really?
goodness.
Cavanaugez.
Was that
Yeah,
yeah, that would be awesome because
yeah,
that movie hit me good. That's a good one for sure.
Yeah.
that is a good movie.
I just have one more question then for me. I
Yeah,
Yeah.
Were there any movies that inspire the
yeah,
creation of this movie that you kind of use
yeah,
as reference?
definitely. Yes, so there's a lot of references visually, tonally. Um, I I really loved. There's like this is like kind of the most like maybe outside the box, but it's not like a weird movie. It's just a movie no one's heard of.
Mhm.
It was a movie in the 90s called Never Cry Wolf. It's just a pretty good movie about a guy who goes to like Alaska or Canada to um study like a declining caribou population. It's a totally random movie. I think it was like a Disney movie, but it was like
Hmm.
like a movie they tried to do for like grown-ups because it's not like a kids movie at all.
Mhm.
But the sound design in that movie is insane, and it's like basically a guy by himself the whole time,
Wow.
like dealing with elements and snow and
Mhm.
whatever. It's shot beautifully, really interesting movie. I totally recommend it.
Yeah,
It just because why not? Into the Wild, I love Into the Wild.
that's a good one.
I love The Wrestler by Darren Aronofsky is
I've heard
really
of that
good.
one. Yeah.
That's a great movie. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I might watch that one.
Definitely watch The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke.
Hmm.
Um, gosh, there's so many. I mean, I love like obviously pacing wise and, you know, like sort of grandeur wise, like we're not in the same level, but like old John Ford movies, like The Searchers,
Hmm.
um, definitely looked at a lot of like master shots from that to try to grab a few of like the kind of more um establishing shots.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, movies like that. I mean, there's a ton.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah.
a ton. I'll probably again after we get off the call be like, ah, should have told him that one. But or like another 127 Hours is a movie I really love. Danny
That's
Boyle.
yeah. Yep.
I love every movie Danny Boyle's ever made. I
Hmm.
think he's such a cool director because he kind of reminds me of directors from like back in the day when they were more like journeyman directors. He's very auteur and like he definitely has a style and you know a Danny Boyle movie and you're watching it. But that said, like he's made them all. Like
Hmm.
he does like sci-fi, he does zombie movies, he does like character studies. Like I just think Danny Boyle's so cool. And 28 years later looks so freaking good. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
we have been talking
That's
about that
gonna
one.
be so good. I mean, I just feel like that's
It-
gonna be I feel
yeah.
like that movie's gonna come out and everyone's gonna be like, well, this whole thing about they don't make movies like they used to is definitely not true anymore. I have a feeling he's about to like move the needle.
Yeah.
There's some shots in those trailers where it's just
Oh
like,
my
dude, that's
gosh.
crazy. Like,
Like the
er,
horizon shot where you're
yeah,
like you
with
can
them
see
Oh
like
running
this
at
yeah.
there's
him.
like there well, there's like a really big one, you know what I
Yeah, that
mean?
Yes,
one's
where he's
crazy.
But
standing on top of the hill. Yeah.
it's so subtle, and you're like,
Yes.
I think Danny Boyle's so cool like that because it's like, oh man, psychologically capturing that where it's like far away and subtle, but
Hmm.
there's just like one little thing where you're like, what? Wait, what? And you're like
Hmm.
looking in because you just see there's like now there's giant zombies, there's
Yeah.
zombie
Yeah.
giants. Like,
Yep.
what?
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of like, you know, something like Miyazaki would have done where it's like really subtle and super far away,
Hmm.
but like it's still like really affecting and makes you kind of feel like really unsettled.
Right.
Anyways, Danny Boyle is just like the best. I think
Yeah.
he's so
That.
cool. I think he's probably more interesting than a lot of directors who get a lot more attention. Not that he doesn't get a ton of attention. He's gotten all the big awards,
Mhm.
but he's not like, you always hear Christopher Nolan or you hear whoever it is, and they all deserve all that great praise. But like Danny Boyle, it's just like, man, he just hits it out of the park
Hmm.
Yeah.
every time, and he's
There-
so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. The camera work for that 28 years later is crazy. I
And
mean,
he's
the
so
scene
great.
that I keep
And
thinking of is the movement scene where it's like on the back of one of the big ones and it's
yeah,
like so natural and
yeah, it's so
so
cool.
uncomfortable and you're like, "Oh, man."
Yeah, I just feel like he's like not gonna waste any time with one. He's like, I just feel like he's the kind of director that's like, he's not gonna waste one shot in that movie.
Exactly.
Every shot in that movie is gonna like like knock your socks off.
Yeah.
And like it's so crazy. Alex Garland, who
Hmm.
wrote the original
Hmm.
28 Days Later. It's so crazy to think like he's such a giant in his own right now.
Hmm.
And he's like writing for Danny Boyle. You're just like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, like their
Uh-huh.
power levels are like super high and they're combining. And I'm like,
Yes.
anyways, it's super cool. I'm not even like a zombie movie kind of guy, but it's just going to be so good.
No, it
I'm
looks
like,
good.
I'm
Yeah.
very excited about it.
It's also fascinating
Anyways,
with Garland, talking about Garland,
yeah.
you're talking about these lower budget movies. That was an incredibly low budget film, and it was
Oh
so
my gosh.
influential for the zombie
Yeah.
genre. And
Dude,
here we are.
changed cinema. Like
It
change
did.
like
It
there's
did.
pre and then there's post, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like Napoleon Dynamite. There was pre-Napoleon Dynamite and post-Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes,
It's funny how
absolutely.
these like little movies can
Mhm.
really change everything. Like if they just hit it right on the head, you know?
Hmm.
They're like
Absolutely.
zeitgeist shifters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the questions we got for you. I mean, the only other thing we do is if you have like anything you want to ask us as viewers of your movie. I mean, I know you don't have to bring up anything specific, but anything you wanted to mention, like we want to give you the opportunity to at least say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
I
worries, but
I man, I think we covered a lot of bases. I don't know. I do like want to shout out like the one dimension of the movie that I'm like really proud of is the soundtrack.
Mm,
Um,
Yeah.
I mentioned that.
Charlie Crockett, whose music is throughout the movie, and then he's actually the snowplow driver at the end,
That's
Oh.
is
cool.
a good friend of mine, and he actually wrote a song for the movie, but the movie took so long to come out that he's like written like four albums since then, and like that song was put in one of the albums. So it's like old news to the world, but people are
Yeah,
probably like, "What? Like that's random."
yeah.
But yeah, he wrote that for me, and he was really really helpful because there were a lot of musicians. Like we had no budget for a soundtrack like the one we got, but
Hmm.
he was really good about like calling a lot of musicians on my list that I knew and saying like, "Hey man, like this guy's a friend, and I'm doing him a favor.
Hmm.
Like, would you do him a favor too?" So he really leveraged his like credibility in that industry to help me
Hmm.
get a really good soundtrack. And yeah, I wanted the sound of the movie to feel like there's kind of like a new revival in country music that isn't like the top 40 type country.
Hmm.
There's the guys that I think are a lot more popular on streaming,
Hmm.
like Tyler Childers and
Yeah.
Yes.
Charlie Crockett and Sturgill Simpson and all those types of guys. And the list goes on and on. But I wanted my movie to feel like the movie version of that,
Yeah.
where it's like a little more stripped down, it's a little more honest, it's a little
Hmm.
more like there's less fanfare. It's just about the storytelling and the tone,
Hmm.
and the vibe, I guess you'd say. So Yeah, I just wanted to shout that one thing out because I really owe Charlie a big debt of gratitude for
Yeah,
helping me
For sure.
get it done.
absolutely. I remember we talked about that as well. The Copperhead Road was perfect.
Oh,
Oh
dude,
yeah, the
Our
end
that's
planet
credits
such a
was
song
great.
was
hitting.
amazing choice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we put that in and I was like, dang, that feels like the beginning of a movie.
It
Like,
so does.
yeah. And you're just worried the whole time. The producer's like, we can't afford that. And you're like, I don't know what I'm going to replace it with.
No, it was perfect. The sound was
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
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 Yeah.
for
for
sure.
sure.
Thanks.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there. I mean,
Cool.
oh, thank you so much
Yes,
for
thank you for
just
sure.
reaching out to us and giving us
Oh,
the
no, thank
opportunity.
you guys. I hope I didn't like blab on and on and on too much about stuff that's not interesting, but I had a blast telling you guys about the journey.
Yeah,
Yeah, truth be told, if it wasn't for time, we could probably talk for 4 hours. So yeah,
Oh
you
yeah,
weren't you
for
weren't
sure.
blabbing at all. You were
yeah.
music to our ears. So, but
Thank
yeah,
you.
everybody, thank you guys for listening to the episode. Make sure you guys check out our other social media, but also please, if you can, go watch Bros.
Yes.
Thank you. We're not just saying this because Carlisle's here. We have an
We said
episode
last
before
episode.
this. I'm gonna say that's kind
That's
of what we were
true.
talking about. Is we had no idea this would happen. Like
Yeah.
we weren't making stuff up. So thank you guys for listening for sure, and we'll catch you guys next time.